Welcome back to the Verdependent podcast, where we depend on the Verde and Black for our everyday vibes. This week, we're doing something a little bit different here. We've got Lobar recovering from his wisdom teeth extraction, so we're pre-recording an interview for all of you guys to enjoy during this week off of Austin FC content. We are super excited to welcome Austin Manning, president of AMSA, to discuss inclusive, community-led soccer. Austin, welcome to the Verdependent, man.
Paul, Logan, thanks for bringing me on. Excited to talk today.
Happy to have you. I'm going to start you off with an easy one, something that you're very familiar with, right? So, Austin Community Soccer Association, Austin Men's Soccer Association, both pillars of the Austin soccer community, and we have the AMSA president with us on the podcast. Austin, in your own words, what is AMSA, and why is local community soccer important?
That's a great question. I think I'd start with just the history of, between our two leagues, we're almost 100 years worth of playing time in Austin, which is pretty incredible when you think about that. Wow. And it started at the community level, right? It started with folks meeting at open patches of grass way back in the day. For AMSA, a little over 50 years ago. For AXA, getting up there close to 50. And it was folks coming together to spend time together with a sport they love, but also to become friends with their community members, with their neighbors, right? We all work these really, sometimes tunnel vision industries, and we see this at Austin FC games where we get this beautiful cross-section of the community all, supporting one sort of common thread. And the same thing happens on the pitch, whether it's a league game or if it's a pickup game at Zilker, or Mueller has a thriving pickup scene these days. So I think that's really what's beautiful about our sport, is that it brings people together that otherwise probably wouldn't have a chance to interact. And in that 90 minutes or in that 2-hour pickup session, we pass the ball to each other, we receive the ball from each other, we learn how to work together without, oftentimes in nonverbal ways. We're working with each other off the ball, on the ball, and we end up seeing value in each other. And I think that's what soccer has the power to do, is to position us in a way where we value people we otherwise wouldn't have ever met, much less thought about, and we leave after that 90 minutes with a new appreciation for our community members. And AXA and AMSA are key parts of that. Between the two leagues, there's 4,000 or 5,000 active players every Saturday and Sunday coming together at Onion Creek Soccer Complex. There's an exchange of ideas, oftentimes beer, but there's an exchange of ideas. There's an exchange of stories, and each one of us interacts with the Austin community in a different way, and we bring that experience and our lived experiences together, and we all spend time sort of sitting in that and sitting on and how those things coexist, and we find a commonality that I think otherwise would be hard to find.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, Austin, going to your title again as president of this league, I have a couple of questions here. One is, how did you come to be, president of a recreational soccer league? Because I guess just to extend that a little bit further, what does a leadership structure look like in terms of like a rec soccer league, and how do folks, get involved that way?
Yeah, I think opinions are a dangerous thing to have, because if you have an opinion, you end up finding yourself in one of these seats, and once you're in one of these seats, you dig in, you kind of get addicted to making it better, forming it in the way that you think it could improve, and you end up working alongside people with a ton of experience and a ton of knowledge, and you create something new and something fresh. So I think that's the starting point, is having that sense of pride, or that sense of commitment to the thing that you're a part of. It breeds opinions, it breeds ideas about how to do it better, and if you vocalize those, people will bring you inside the tent, as they say, because it's a lot better to have those at the generative stage than just the feedback stage. We all value feedback in leadership roles, but it's a whole lot better when you're in the planning stage to have really committed and invested people's ideas. So that's how I got involved. I went to a board of captains meeting as a captain of our club. So AXA and AMSA, our core nonprofit structure is that we have a board of captains, which is a representative from every team in the league, and that is sort of our governing board. And then each of them have an executive committee, not unfamiliar from most sort of nonprofits. So once or twice a year, we hold these general meetings. People come, they want to know, why are the ref fees going up, what's going on with the watering schedule, but they also come in and they say, hey, what about Wednesday games? What about sevens leagues? What about walk soccer for people coming back from injury, or for folks that are aging out of the more competitive soccer? And so there's this fun incubation period that happens at these meetings as well. And if you speak loud enough there and follow it up with an email and volunteer to do something, you're likely to get tied down for several years. In
There you go.
AMSA's case, I ended up as the a divisional commissioner. So each of our divisions, which have about 10 teams, has a commissioner that helps our senior commissioner and our leadership really connect with the captains, make sure they have what they need, answer questions, just resolve disputes when those happen, because it's a competitive sport and all of us are out there for fun and recreation. But we also value sort of fairness and transparency in how promotion and relegation works. So they do a lot of that facilitation for the division, and they also act as sort of our executive committee as far as big decisions that need to eventually be ratified by the board. Inside that, we have your typical officers. We have a senior commissioner who is in charge of the competition committee and helps sort out where a team should and shouldn't be, helps resolve issues. We have our president, our vice president, and then we have our rules and procedures, our disciplinary, the naughty list commissioner who helps with all those cautions and the communication of the impact of those cautions, which is a job I've been luckily enough to avoid being directly involved in, other than being brought in on decision making. And then what the position I sat in for a while was the field commissioner for us at AMSA, which is unique to AMSA because we're stewards of the Onion Creek Soccer Complex in partnership with the City of Austin, the Parks and Rec Department, since the about 2004. A huge community asset that we help maintain and operate out there. And so that position, you really get intimate with all the inner workings, because you think it's just about making sure that the landscaping contractors have what they need, but you're being pulled in on, hey, should we allow this type of sport to rent it out on this weekend? What's the field damage? And I've learned more about Bermuda and rye and Kentucky bluegrass than I ever thought I would know in my life. I've learned about reclaimed water versus potable water in ways that I never thought I would be worried about. But through that, I ended up being the treasurer and field commissioner for a series of years, and then came into the presidency officially last year, having been voted in last January, and then was shadowing for the president's role for a couple years prior to that.
Nice.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
You're incredibly involved in as a player, right? Somebody who's played in this league for a couple years. I appreciate all that goes into it, but you really don't know the scale till you get down and talk with the president and hear exactly how large of an organizational chart this is.
Absolutely.
But your involvements don't end there, right?
No,
so you share with us that you're involved in the Federation of Gay Games and the greater global LGBTQ sporting movement for Pride. So can you tell the listeners a little bit more about that involvement as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The Federation of Gay Games has been around since the 1980s. It was founded by former Olympian Dr. Tom Waddell. He went to the Mexico City Games and was a member of the track and field contingency there. And one of the things that he loved about it was that sense of connection with other athletes and the exchange of sort of experiences that we were just talking about happens every Sunday and Saturday out here in Austin. Right. But one of the things he didn't love about it was the nationalism and this stark divide that happened between some of those same groups that were friends at the beginning of the week that then felt like they couldn't cheer the other one on when they won later on because of ties that they had to respect but didn't necessarily reflect the values of the games that he was experiencing. At the same time, it was the 1980s. The AIDS epidemic was becoming a thing. It was already impacting some pretty specific communities. In this case, San Francisco and the Castro was getting hit hard right from the start, amongst New York and several other major urban areas in the United States. And there was a stigma about gay and queer athletes participating in sport. We didn't know anything about the virus. Think back to 2020 when we were scrubbing our bananas coming back from HEB, right? Like, nobody knew what was happening. And so there was a big sort of movement to show that the community was still healthy, it was still vital, that there was still life in this otherwise pretty dark time for our community. And the San Francisco Athletic Club, I believe is what they were called at the time, got together and they were like, let's invite people from the West Coast, let's get them up from LA, let's get them from Vancouver, let's get them from anywhere they can come, and let's just have this week-long celebration of multidisciplinary sports and some cultural events and some opening ceremonies, and let's make an Olympics that shows that this community, we're here, we are living, we are together, we're supportive of each other, and give an opportunity for folks to come out and show that support as well, to give them an event to come to that maybe isn't Friday night at a gay bar with disco playing, which is great for me, but not everybody's seen, right? And also to allow corporate groups and folks that would not necessarily show support at a bar scene, but could get behind a sports event to say, hey, we're here with your community and we want to come out and support you both financially and in person, and giving them a really, wholesome, if we'll go that far, but a wholesome event to say, hey, let's tag our brand onto this and say we're with you and tell us what you need and let's activate it. That's a really romantic way of remembering the early days. As someone who obviously wasn't there, I've also heard from the folks that have been there and the struggle that it took to get permission. We lost the Tidal Gay Olympics the week or two before, and we had to rebrand everything because the IOC didn't want to risk connection of the Olympic name with AIDS and with the moment that was happening. And there were times where venues got pulled. So all that is that origin story that said, we want to do something for us, about us, that invites everybody to come be a part of this. And then for 40 beautiful years since then, every 4 years, the event has come together. It features 36 to 38 sports each time. There's 3 to 4 major cultural events, band, choral, cheer. And it has opening and closing ceremonies, and it's been in New York, San Francisco, Vancouver. It's been in Amsterdam, Cologne, Paris, Chicago. Cleveland and Akron, Ohio hosted it at one point.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're getting ready for our last one was in Guadalajara and Hong Kong, and that was COVID years, and it was really interesting to have an event on two sides of the globe at the exact same time. We billed it as 24 hours of gay games because when one group was closing down the club, the other ones were warming up for their their 400 meters.
Right.
And we're gearing up for Valencia, and what's really cool about the opportunity in Valencia that's really apropos to this moment during Pride Month is that the Spanish national law was passed that says that anything with government money has to be gender inclusive. And since a huge part of the funding for these games comes from the Spanish government, we're working through all the in and outs about what does that mean in sanctioned sports. How do we make sure that we have competitive sports that are fair to all participants but are also open to everyone? Because a founding part of our organization is participation, right? It's participation in personal best, and so we need to figure out how do we make gender inclusive categories for all these sports while doing right by our member organizations who are accredited and sanctioned organizations that want to take your pool lap time to the next competition, that want to take your handicap from your golf tournament and let that count towards your amateur statuses. So we're like everybody, we're stumbling through that. And what does trans and non-binary inclusion look like? What is besides inclusion, but uplifting those communities? What does that look like in a massive field of 12,000 participants? We're working with partner groups, advisory boards, and I think the most important thing, and the thing I can't specifically talk to, is that we need their voices in the mix. And so it's really trying to get in there and find partners who care about sports and culture in the same way we do, that want to volunteer as much time for a massive international organization like that, and really create something new that can be a guidepost for leagues like AMSA, for leagues like AXA. And I think that's where AXA shines. AXA, they were formerly known as the Co-ed Soccer Association just until a couple years back, and they made the commitment to go through a large rebranding to say community soccer, to live their values of inclusivity, that anybody should be playing in their league, of any skill set, of any gender identity. They still have work to do figuring out about gender parity on the fields, right? There's still some laws of the game from IFAB that are built in that require people to identify in certain ways. But Alyssa Zamansky, the president of AXA, is an amazing ally and advocate when it comes to that, and is there to resolve any issues on the field any day when somebody wants to challenge that in a way that is respectful to the individual that might be being questioned, and doesn't make space for people to be errantly accusing or upset about things like that. And anyway, AMSA follows AXA's lead on so much of this inclusivity and so much of these ways to be radically hospitable. They invite us to Pride. They invite us to roller derby events that are uplifting other groups. And I'm so thankful for the partnership we have with AXA in that, because it helps us follow a little bit easier of a road, as well as being able to bring sort of the support and resources we have to a mission that we align ourselves with as well.
That's awesome, man. And I keep saying awesome because it's just incredible. Like Logan was saying earlier, when you live it, weekend in, weekend out, and it's just like you don't realize behind the scenes all of these different levers that are at play, and so I thanks so much, man. Thank you so much for doing this, because I mean, as a participant in AMSA as well, with the Paprika team and stuff like that, it's like we love that so much about the league in the sense that it is just an open space for that. But it brings us to our next question perfectly, because looking at the men's space in particular, I'm gonna go back and forth here in just a second, but I look at, I follow the NWSL a lot, and we both do on this podcast, but I look at the professional women's leagues like NWSL here in the States and WSL abroad in the UK, and how they're strong models of how communities and organizations embrace that queerness and inclusivity, like among their fan bases, but also just within the teams themselves. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Austin, where it's like, what are some things that you've observed from leagues like that that could be mirrored in the men's game? Because I think you would agree with me where it might not be as evident there, and I think we could maybe push for a little bit more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the major things I think is moving us in the right direction is another example I followed from Alyssa and AXA. AMSA has a strict, basically no hate speech, no tolerance policy for racism, and bringing things like sexual orientation and the rest of these sort of identities and dimensionalities that each of us bring to the field into that overarching policy of like, that's not, we're not here for that, and there's no space for that. I think that's one thing AXA does really well, and the women's leagues in general do a much better job of. I'm not going to say that men are a little bit less empathetic naturally, but I do think that there's a shared experience that when women, trans and non-binary people have of being outside of that, everything being catered for them, that it creates a little bit more sort of intuitive community that is broader than just their singular gender identities or experiences. And so I really think that it's making a strong stance from the get-go that this is an organization that values players, and players come in all different shapes, sizes, skill sets, backgrounds, sexual orientations, religions, and really just blowing that door wide open to say, not only are you welcome, but we've got your back when you get here. When something goes wrong, when something isn't as 100% positive experience, my door is open. Here's the contact information. Here's our clear policy. At the gay games, for instance, we're talking about trans and non-binary participants in the Valencia games, and one of the things we're talking about is every time you go through a check-in process, that to me as a cisgendered white man walking in is nothing, right? I'm like, oh, here's my ID. Sometimes I'm like, oh, can I use my library card? I don't think twice. But there's individuals who are presenting perhaps with a different presenting gender than their legal document might show. And so that becomes a very loaded situation. Or to be a member of a BIPOC community and to be asked for your ID by anyone in a uniform can be a very different experience than I have every day. So also figuring out ways that our leagues can remove those barriers. So going to digital identification cards that are provided by the league so that nobody can ask for your state ID. So no referee is saying, hey, I need your driver's license. Like, let's just get that out of the way. And now we have, here's your Facebook picture. Great, cool. We need it to be a little more structured than that because of, insurance and things like that. But there are ways that we can provide workarounds to otherwise sort of intimidating experiences, or experiences that I may just not want to get involved in, right? I just don't want to put myself in that position. And so I think those are sort of things we're currently looking at. But overall, I think the big shift that has to happen in men's soccer, men's competitive soccer, is sort of a de-escalation. The amount of yellow cards and red cards that come from violent conduct or come from referee abuse are problematic overall, right? Regardless of what was said, the fact that we're abusing referees, or the fact that we are, that there's racism even being spouted on the field, calls to a much different issue. And we, I don't think your podcast is broad enough to go completely socio-political, but I think there's things that we should remind ourselves and recenter ourselves on. Like, what's the purpose of our competition? Our competition is to bring out personal best, to bring out development, to stay healthy. Our competition is not to end up scouted and be on Arsenal's starting 11, right? That I love Onion Creek, but that's not starting there. That ship is gone at this point.
Yeah.
So for amateur and recreational soccer, we need to be thinking about all of our policies, all of our rules, all the ways we engage our captains and our players from that standpoint of like, we're looking to make a community here that is centered around a positive experience playing a sport we love, that gives us a health boost, that gives us a chance to meet others in our community, and that we walk away wanting to be friends versus walking away with nemesises. I love having rival teams, those teams that you're like, oh man, it's Derby Sunday, right? Like, let's go.
Sure.
But that Derby Sunday culture, like with Nopaleros, for instance, in D3, or even with for my D1 team with Zilker FC, right? Like, they can be a little tense at times while you're playing, but right afterwards, it's like, hey, who wants a beer? You know, it's handshakes, it's congratulations, hey, y'all are getting promoted, that's awesome, you won the Icarus Cup, well done. And so making sure that our competition funnels that direction versus being something more diminutive or reductive or something that makes us, that erodes at that fundamental purpose of creating community.
Yeah. That's grassy stains for us.
Yeah.
Truly.
Our rival team. Yeah. No, this is awesome. Thank you for sharing all these perspectives,
Absolutely.
right? And then what goes into these communities in AXA and AMSA. Let's get into some rapid fire questions. So
Let's
in
go.
place of stoppage time for the listener, we're going to run through about 6 quick questions. Austin will say like 60 to 90 seconds or less, but talk as you will. We'll manage how we need to. And we'll kind of run through some of these that are more personal or just more local.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, you were recently interviewed on CBS Austin's We Are Austin to kick off Pride Month and talk about community soccer here in town. You said, more or less a quote, "Our welcome mat is as wide as our fields."
Yeah.
And I thought that was beautifully said. And so I was hoping you would expand a little bit on what that means to you in the context of AMSA or just your lived experience in the soccer community.
Absolutely. Trevor Scott's a great friend from CBS Austin. We were so honored, Alyssa and I, to be on there and to represent our leagues and represent the reason we're out there for this community. Wider than our fields is exactly what it sounds like. We've been to Onion Creek. There's 10 fields out there. That's a pretty big statement. So it's putting my foot in the ground to say, like, this is how much we want people out there. We want to be able to have parking issues. We want to have 3,600 people trying to play at the same time. So it's a guide for the organization and for myself to be a litmus for all the decisions we're making. But it's also aspirational. It's 10 fields wide, right? Like, that's a huge goal. And it shows that we're short of it right now, but it gives us a clear goal, which is to be bigger than I think any of us can imagine us being. And if you can't find a place to feel safe playing soccer in a 10-field complex, then that means we're doing something wrong that we can fix. Right. Let us know. Let's work on it. If it was just one field, it's easy for us to get kicked off of one field, right? Any one of us could get out there and feel like we didn't have an opportunity to play. But with 10 fields times 6 slots times 2 days a weekend, if there's not a place for you at Onion Creek, we're doing something wrong as AXA and AMSA, and we need to fix that.
Yep. Austin, what is one thing you wish participants in either league, AXA, AMSA, they knew about you that they might not know just by walking by or seeing you at Onion Creek?
Well, I mean, I have a theater degree, which is pretty strange for a lot of times, especially when you couple that with sports. But I think that's important. Yeah. I think the reason I have a theater degree and the reason I like soccer is that when I was in high school, there's the concept of safe spaces, right? Where do you feel welcome? Where do you want to go? Where do you start to find out who you are? And for me, that was the theater first. And I actually left soccer to stay in theater because A, the time commitment, and B, just the community there was just more readily accepting of whoever walked through the door. But I actually came back to soccer because of what I had experienced in theater as well, which is that you find value in each other through working together in a team. So I think just understanding that all of us have some dimensionality that we haven't known about each other is probably what I'd want people to know, is that I can come off pretty soccer heavy to the soccer community because that's what we talk about. Doing it 4 or 5 times a week, we all pigeonhole each other into soccer players, but each one of us is bringing a whole story, a whole perspective that goes beyond the game to the field. So if you see me, there's a lot more under the water than what you're expecting.
Yeah. Paul, pan over to the signed Hamilton poster on your wall.
Yeah, right. Over on the wall there. Yeah. No, man, that's awesome. And to your point, I mean, we all contain multitudes, and I think it is really important for every one of us that show up, at Onion Creek and anywhere else in life that we're able to see other people for that as well and share that, from ourselves. But yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. This question will be an exercise in summarizing the last 24 and a half minutes in just a few words. To you, what is the most important aspect to fostering an inclusive and successful soccer community?
Open hearts, open minds, man. Like we said, everyone comes with so many different things happening in their lives. Sometimes we show up and it's a good day. Sometimes we show up, it's a bad day. So being able to be intuitive to each other and know that we're all out there for something positive and good. And if we're not jiving that day, either help them get there or don't push their buttons. But it's just open hearts, open minds. Be ready for everyone to have a chance to contribute.
Yep. Cool as you like. Nice and simple.
Love that, man. So we talked a little bit about this off air, but this is a longer one. So feel free to, if you haven't thought about this yet, but who are some outlets and organizations that you follow that report on or highlight the queer community in sport? And so it doesn't necessarily have to be soccer in general, although that's what we normally talk about. But I mean, if there's anything else that comes to mind, feel free to share.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I'll plug the Gay Games socials. We highlight, we've got 50 or so member organizations, and those are federation level membership organizations that are highlighting clubs like IGLFA is about to join again, International Gay and Lesbian Football Association. That's what our club, Austin Power FC, and the Austin Gold Stars, who have been in AMSA for 25 years. We're members of that organization.
No way.
And so they're highlighting the grassroots people, right? They're showcasing their stories in all these communities around the world, and they're showcasing these tournaments that are centered around supporting queer athletes. So looking at organizations like that, IGLFA, IGLA, they're all out there. Every sport has one. But then also what we talked about a minute ago with sort of trans and non-binary voices is finding those athletes out there. They are making their own socials. They are making their impact on their communities with their voice and finding their channels and supporting them. I mean, we all know how socials work when you start to be able to get recurring funding based off of participation and interaction. And so even just a light can help support a BIPOC trans individual's voice and get them to a platform that otherwise has been void of that person or that group's voice for so long. And you can hear straight from them, what are they needing, what is their experience right now, where are they feeling pressure points, and what can we do as individuals who already have sustained agency, what can we do to support their advocacy work and get in there. And then, of course, there's many LGBTQ sports-related media companies out there. There's a lot of them in the LA area, the Bay Area. So just looking up, just literally, if you were to type in like gay sports articles, and you'll find Outsports, for instance, who does a lot. And they're highlighting organizations like the FGG. They're highlighting individuals that are, being the first whatever sport athlete to come out while still being a professional player. They're highlighting folks that have made massive contributions or new organizations that are creating space where otherwise there wasn't. And they do that on a global level. And so you're finding out groups in South Africa that are creating safe space for queer athletes in South Africa, which is just crazy to think about when you realize all the things that South Africa is juggling, and yet people are still finding the energy and the time to create space for recreational queer sports, which is just a beautiful thing. That's what I would say. Just start digging. It's there. We're loud. We're proud. We're here. You'll find us as you go. But really just trying to get close as close as you can to the voices so that we know what we can do to be better allies to each of these groups.
Yeah.
Heard.
And I'll do an obligatory plug for our friends at QueefPod here more locally. QUIF Pod. They cover all things women's soccer and more. So
what's good and what's gay.
Yeah.
This year's Austin FC Y'all Means All Cup is on June 20th. Will you be playing?
I will. Last year I had shoulder surgery, so I had to Ted Lasso coach it from the sideline, so I'm excited to get back out there. The first year I played with the LGBT Chamber, who were sort of the special guests for the tournament, and then last year coached an AXA team, and then I'll be out there again this year. So if you see me on the field, don't nutmeg me. Let me get that pass through. I'm aging. It might be my last one. You never know.
Right.
There you go.
In June of all months, if you nutmeg me, that's just a hate crime. I think that's homophobic.
Right.
Exactly. I can't believe it took us 29 minutes to ask this question, but where do you play on the field? What's your position of choice?
Yeah, classic center back. That's why I do all this talking, so I don't have to run.
Nice, dude.
Exactly.
He's back there, man. He's sweeping it up.
So,
exactly. Yeah, I prefer
That's
a flat
awesome.
back if you got the right partner, but I'll go old-fashioned diamond if I have to. But that's more running. So having a strong side, weak side partner is my preferred setup.
Yeah.
There you
Paul and
go.
I spend a lot of time running off of each other at center back,
Yeah.
so I understand.
It's a
what we
whole
do,
team of
man.
center backs here, man.
Exactly.
Well, looking at last year, so you were saying that AMSA celebrated its 50th year anniversary, providing an inclusive environment for soccer here in Austin. And I think you already touched on this, but just again to highlight that, what does that mean for you, Austin?
It's looking backwards, you think about 50 years of folks like myself and all the folks you don't see, and it's just standing on the shoulders of giants, right? This came out of sheer desire to play soccer. And turned into an organized league with 20 something teams the first year, and now we're sitting at 100 and 145 teams. This summer we're having our largest enrollment or registration for AMSA ever at 60 plus teams, which is incredible in 105-degree heat.
Right.
And you just see the significance of that organization as what it has been, and it gives you nothing but optimism about what this organization can become. And when you think about growing the amount of people coming out to a space that is centered around collaboration, it really gives me hope for all those other things that we can't talk about these days that are going on around us, right? The idea of like, if I can play against you in soccer and then I run into you in City Hall, it might make me think twice about my position in that moment, right? And so just knowing that the impact we've already had on thousands and thousands of players' lives and therefore their families, what that looks like for the next 50 years, and to be the first openly gay individual in that role it's a really unique opportunity, again, to say, look, if I've been able to create space here as an openly gay man, you can too. And it may not be the easiest pathway, but obviously there's a way through an organization that you might have had one concept of their, sort of who they are, that creates space and allows for folks that have, the ability to contribute and the desire to work hard. Like, there's a space for everyone here who loves the game, wants to make it better, and wants to expand this community. Those are those three key things. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter what you're bringing with you. As a matter of fact, we're going to celebrate that aspect of you as you do these things and you accomplish things on behalf of all of us. Because at the end of the day, we're really there again to play soccer on Sunday. And the more we can make it easy for other folks to not even know what's happening in the background, that's the idea. So yeah, that's what it means to me, is looking backwards at an intense legacy and a responsibility to uphold sort of all this energy that came, and then being able to look forward to say, like, man, if I can make it here with all the D's and C's I got in college and all the corners I've cut, how excited I am for the opportunity that presents to all those other people who are 10 times more hardworking and intelligent than I am.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that about wraps up time, man. And I know you got a show to get going to, but as always, listener, we appreciate y'all kicking it with us this week on the episode of the Verdependent podcast. I'm Paul Fletes. You can catch me on Twitter at PaulAndrewFC.
It's government name. And I'm Logan Bartlett. You can find me at Lobar VHLM.
And Austin, thank you so much again for joining us this week. Tell our listeners where they can find you and follow all things AMSA, FGG, and more.
Yeah, I'm Austin Manning, FGG at Gay Games on pretty much every social media. Austin Men's Soccer at Austin Men's Soccer, and you can find me down at Zach Theater pretty much anytime I'm not at the field. It's where my day job is, and come join us, see some shows. And if you see me around town, a beer or a margarita go a long way. That's all I'll say.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Man.
I love that.
Well, of course, we'll make sure to plug all the links and all the organizations that we talked about on today's episode in the show notes. But as always, keep the chatter going online by following at the Verdependent on socials. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And ladies and gentlemen, that's an episode. Peace.
Peace. Oh, why are you screaming at me?
Oh, my God.